Hello and welcome to this edition of the Evening Review. My name is Toiwan Jabala, your host for tonight. Let's have a quick look at today's front page of Namibian Sun. Tonight on the show, we are joined by Florette Nakusera, who is the chairperson of the Council of the Namibia University of Science and Technology, NUST, and she's on the show tonight to tell us more about the issues that have raised or occurred in the past couple of days regarding the appointment of the vice-chancellor. She is speaking to us from Swakopmund. Florette, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Joyce. Good evening, and to also a good evening to the viewers.
Thank you very much. So, it hasn't been easy days for the university, especially its council, after the decision that you made last week to appoint Dr. Erold Naomab as vice-chancellor of NUST, with so many doubts whether the process was credible. How credible was the process?
Joyce, I can confirm to you that it was a credible process. And having said that, a number or quite a good number of experienced councillors serve on this council. Mm-hmm. And the reason why it was also credible is the process was set out from the onset. We had an external panel member that was part of the interview panel. Yeah. And then we had the joint search committee of Council and Senate, which is called the JSCCS. Mm-hmm. That is the main committee that was spearheading the whole process of finding the vice-chancellor. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we had certain criteria according to which we then deliberated. Some of the criteria was quantitative, some of it was qualitative. And that is the combination of all of those discussions that then emanated emanated into us appointing the vice-chancellor. So it was a credible process.
Mm. So those quantitative and qualitative assessments, are they what gave you eventually the final scores, or the scores was on something else?
So what happened is that 4 criteria that we were looking at, apart from now the discussions. So the number one of the criteria was that we looked at the formal interview. So in the formal interview, questions were given to the candidates, different scores from different panel members, as we then discussed it. And then we had the second, which was the public interviews. And the reason why we put it out in the public was also for the public to see the caliber of candidates that we are looking at in terms of spearheading or steering the ship of NUST. Mm-hmm. And then we had another criteria, which was now the psychometric test. Psychometric test was quite comprehensive. We had a company that did the psychometric test, but then we also had other criteria that we were looking at, and we were so lucky that these 2 candidates also was being interviewed last year. So we had a set of other psychometric tests that were also done, that we were able to get a whole holistic picture of what are these candidates that we are looking at, the characters around these candidates, looking at cognitive profiles of these candidates. So it was a whole holistic picture, even in terms of the psychometric testing. And then we had the reference checking. So when we have the reference checking, what we are cross-checking is what the reference is saying. Is it confirmed by what the psychometric test is saying? Are there some anomalies in terms of when the person is then being rated by his or her supervisor? Is what the supervisor is saying confirming with what the psychometric test is saying? And these are all criteria that we are looking at. So I've seen in social media that people have been talking about, no, the other candidate scored higher, the other candidate scored lower, the other candidate, that is not, because this is a strategic position. It's not just a general position where you look at, no, I have scored this person what, I have scored this person what. It's a holistic picture that we are looking at. So the type of candidate that we are looking at would determine who ultimately will be recommended for the position.
So essentially you are saying that there's, in fact, before I ask this next question, maybe just help me understand then to their scores. Were they based then on those variety of issues that you listed, or is it a specific thing that they were scored on?
So how the scores went is scores, the quantitative scores in terms of percentages were done for the closed door interview and the presentation. Those were the two that were scored quantitatively. And then you had the qualitative criteria, which is then adding to the quantitative scores. So the qualitative information comes from psychometric and from the background check. So then you combine these four, and then you say, quantitatively, this person have scored maybe one, quantitatively, the other person have maybe scored two on the two criteria that was given. But then you have the qualitative information, which is coming from psychometric and which is coming from the background. And that combined, because the other two criteria you are not scoring, those are qualitative information.
Indeed.
Yeah, and that combination of those two is what then emanated us into making the decision.
Indeed.
Many institutions or other institutions would look at it, maybe even scoring quantitatively on issues such as psychometric tests and on background checks. But it becomes very difficult when you are scoring on a background check, which someone has said that this is how the person is. So what you do is you cross-check the information of what is in the background check, you cross-check it with what is in the psychometric test, and then you come up with a holistic picture of this is the candidate that is looking in terms of when we look at what is the type of candidate, what is the type of vice-chancellor that we are looking at in the institution, and then you come up with the decision in terms of this is the candidate that we would propose. So it is not just about, and I want to repeat it to the viewers, that it is not just about a scoring in your interview questions and a scoring in your presentation questions. Strategic positions such as a CEO is different from when you have an entry-level position, where it is about when you go into an interview, you are asked 5 questions, and based on those 5 questions, you get to be scored, and that's it.
So maybe for the record and for the sake of the viewers, Florette, what does Dr. Naomab bring to the table as far as your assessment is concerned as council?
All right. So what Dr. Naomab brings, and when I did the press conference last week, in fact, I have pointed out quite a bit in terms of the type of skill that Dr. Naomab is bringing to us. But I will indicate once again, the visionary leadership, the strategic capabilities in terms of strategic thinking. What we are looking at is we want a vice-chancellor that will put NUST on the map globally and in Africa. We have a strategic goal, and we are still pondering upon it as we are finalizing our strategic plan, in terms of where we want to see the Namibia University of Science and Technology in 5 years' time, in terms of its ranking in Africa and in terms of its ranking globally as a University of Science and Technology. It is the only University of Science and Technology that we have in Namibia. So his strategic thinking and visionary leadership, his business acumen, as you have seen, NUST have been inundated with reports about the financial issues in terms of also being affected by COVID, but apart from COVID also that we are running deficits, and we want someone that can come in, that can get us strategic partnerships, that can help us to form those strategic partnerships that can help bring funds. Dr. Naomab have illustrated, even in the public interviews, how he has at the Southern Campus brought in a German government-funded project, for example, that he is running successfully. One of the projects that is going to support the country in becoming a research, in one of the key projects in terms of industrialization on research and innovation. So that aspects of research and innovation, the business acumen, and strategic visionary leadership has been really one of the key attributes that has made us to say that this is the type of person that we are looking at. But it's just one of the key attributes, and really that holistic picture is very important for people to see.
I understand. Now, there was also, Florette, there was, of course, a lot of things started leaking in the wake of the decision that Council took to appoint Dr. Naomab. And one of the issues that came out was the reference sought from Dr. Matengu, the vice-chancellor of UNAM, to sort of assess, to give his assessment of the two candidates, because they work for UNAM too. Now, Dr. Naomab, I understand that he reports to 3 different supervisors on the issues of academic issues, research and finance. And none of these supervisors or the direct reports are Professor Matengu. Do you think Professor Matengu would give you a fair assessment of Dr. Naomab when he didn't report directly to him?
So if I can tell you on that one, choice is that Professor Matengu is the overall head of the institution. One of the direct reports, and the key direct report, I believe, is Professor Gideon. So as you know, Professor Gideon was also in the run. How would it be that you ask Professor Gideon to give a reference check for the person that he is competing against? Because the academic affairs is your key of key business that of Dr. Naomab. So then holistically, obviously, then you would go to the next level to whom your supervisor is reporting to. And I believe as a pro-vice-chancellor, so it is not just looking at a head of department, but it's a assistant pro-vice-chancellor of a whole campus. And therefore, through Dr. Matengu should be able to then provide that holistic picture about Dr. Naomab. And even more so, I'm pretty much sure, maybe on finance and administration issues, he must have consulted. But more so, the good thing about this is that as a council or as a joint search committee, we were not even involved to get reference checks, because that was outsourced totally to a different company. So background checks and the psychometric test was done by a different company. It was not done by the council itself. We just got the results. Yeah.
Indeed. I have 2 more questions for you, Florette. One is, of course, the view expressed by the Minister of Higher Education, your direct reporting minister, on this issue, where Dr. Itakanji Morangi sort of hinted at this process having been contradictory to the principles of good governance, and urging you specifically to align yourself and that process to good governance. Do you think she misread the signals of how you did things? What was your response to her?
I would definitely say that, because even if you look at her letter, you will see that she says if the allegations are true, what is alleged. So that's where we need to start. So these allegations that were made were untrue. And that is why the statement that follows thereafter is then also not correct. Because if the allegations are not true, that in itself already determines then that the statement that follows thereafter is not correct. So the Honorable Minister therefore indicated if these allegations are true, it's not good governance. So I can testify and I can assure the public and yourself that nothing we did was against good governance. It was correctly done, and therefore it was in accordance with the governance process. Because the way in which the allegations were made is there was a recommendation that was recommending Professor Gideon, which is not true. And I want to again reiterate on that issue. And you pretty much probably saw our response to the letter that we received, where we indicated that the Joint Search Committee, if there was anyone that should have known what the Joint Search Committee recommended, it should have been me. Because according to the NUST statutes, I am, by virtue of being the chairperson of council, I am also the chairperson of the Joint Search Committee of Council. So the Joint Search Committee, which I chaired, recommended, the majority of the members of the Joint Search Committee recommended Dr. Naomab to become the vice-chancellor. And that recommendation was carried to council. And council then, through a majority, again, majority vote this time around, because when there were two motions, council went to vote. And that should be clear. The council, one thing about academics is that it has got academic autonomy. And that's the nice part of this council, because it is guided by an act which is called the Namibia University of Science and Technology Act. So that act states very clearly that council shall appoint the vice-chancellor. So the ultimate authority lies with council. So in case this recommendation that we have brought as a joint search committee of council, if we have brought this recommendation, council still had the prerogative to decide that they are not going to accept Dr. Naomab. They could have said joint majority, as the majority recommendation was carried over to council, we are not in agreement, even if you are the majority. We are going to reject that recommendation. That onus lied on council. So council could still have decided. But then when that recommendation was carried through, the majority recommendation was carried through from joint search to council, council then debated this issue all around. And council again looked at this process holistically. Council looked at the criteria we used, because we had to explain to council, this is what we did. So we went through to the process, the interviews. Council members were also at the public presentation, although they were not scoring. So they had a very fair view around how the presentations went. And then we briefed them on what was contained in the psychometric test. We also briefed them what was contained in the reference check. So when it came to council, council deliberated again around this issue holistically. And from there, council said, all right, we have got this recommendation from the majority of the members of the JSCCS. Therefore, are we carrying through this motion through consensus, or how, are we carrying through consensus? And then there was, we are having now a motion that we are going to appoint Dr. Naomab as the vice-chancellor. But then there was a second motion that said, no, we are not in agreement with Dr. Naomab's to be the vice-chancellor. And what happened then, when you have two motions on the table, you go over into the voting process. And that is where the voting came in. And 9 out of 14 council members who were present on that day voted in favor of Dr. Naomab. That is the process that followed. There was no governance flaw, and we have explained all of that to the Honorable Minister. And that's why you say, that's why she indicated that then she has got no other further additional comments or anything on this process, because we have explained it in detail to her, and also responded on the letter.
Indeed.
So I really want people to be looking at the NUST Act when they are looking at this picture holistically.
Indeed. How confident are you of seeing this process through in light of the letters? Now we've seen lawyers have gotten involved, Sisana Manje acting on behalf of Professor Gideon, and of course NUST having acquired the services of Patrick Kauta, because Professor Gideon is threatening to take the matter to court. Are you confident that the process that you've undertaken can stand the test of court processes?
Indeed, Joyce, we are confident that the process that we followed is in accordance with the NUST Act and in accordance with the NUST statutes, because that is the ultimate that we have to look at the process that we followed. And therefore, we are confident the decision that we made, it still stands as is. We have already on that Friday provided an offer, as we have indicated, and the offer was signed already. So that decision stands as is. Of course, anyone that wants to challenge the outcome of that, this is the good part of democracy. So if someone wants to challenge it, by all means, but from our side, I can only talk from our side. I cannot talk from the other parties. From our side, our process was diligent, and therefore we are confident that we still proceed with our decision, and our decision still stands. That nothing has changed, and we have responded to the lawyers of Prof. Gideon, that in terms of the decision making, and that our decision is still as is. So
Indeed.
there's nothing that changed there.
Yeah, so the final question, Florette, then is, of course, we have seen a lot of interest in the matter. The SWAPO Youth League, for example, issuing a statement last week questioning the process, and a lot of people publicly stating that, no, this is a tribally decided process. What can you tell us about those considerations to say it was purely on competencies, and there was no tribalism whatsoever involved in the process?
Joyce, when it comes to tribalism, I'm actually very surprised when people start making such statements. Because for us to be tribal, maybe some of us then will be tribal within our own households. Because as many know, I'm married. My husband is a Oshivambo, a Kwanyama for that matter. And my children are Nama Kwanyamas. So I don't know, when we talk about tribalism and all those things, then I have to probably start being tribal in my own household. But sure. Having said that, NUST Council is one of the councils where we have a variety. And when the Honorable Minister put together this council, I think she put a lot of thought into bringing people from diverse backgrounds. So we have got quite a number of rainbow nation within that council. Because we have people from different backgrounds, different tribes, different clans that are all put together. And the nice part of it is that we are also people with different skill sets. Some of us had numerous CEO recruitments that we did. You can have, we were involved as panel members in some recruitments. Some recruitments we actually appointed, where we were chairpersons of other boards, where we went through the same process. So the same experience that we have done, and the same experience where we also appointed Oshivampo speaking CEOs. We had that process already, and those CEOs are still working at those institutions. So when it comes to tribal, I really want to dismiss such allegations. And what makes us very unhappy as a council is confidential information that was placed in the hands of only a few of our members as council members became public documents, which for one, someone's psychometric test, background checks, you don't get those type of information out in the public, because it is really unethical to be putting such information, trying to cause animosity, trying to get public support. It is totally unacceptable, and we condemn whoever leaked that, because that was just confusing the public, because people probably mistaken NUST with other institutions. NUST is an autonomous body on its own.
Yeah.
Council makes the ultimate decision on appointment. No one can influence a council decision. That's why the Honorable Minister never get involved in this process. She only asked us when the outcome came and the outcry came. And therefore, I'm asking people to please respect academic autonomy, because that is where it all starts. And this council has got a variety of skills, from professors to doctors, from HR expertise that you have, to finance experts, to economists, to academics, even on research and innovation. We even have the student body, for that matter, that is represented on this council. So it is a big council, but you will have different views and different opinions about certain issues. So as long as we can respect our different opinions, at the end of the day, we have individual and collective responsibility. And what is important is that even amidst all our differences, at the end of the day, because we are fighting here for a common goal, we should respect ourselves, we should respect the process, and we should move forward as a joint body, because there are a lot of things. This is just the beginning of us getting a vice-chancellor at the top. But from here, we have to drive this university, because our aim is, when we exit this university after 2 years, because our first year of the term is gone, we should put the university at a better footing than how we found it. We want a university of science and technology that is thriving, and that is our aim. We don't want to get involved into tribal issues and all these other things that we have been accused of. And I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Yeah. No, Florette, thank you very much for your time, really. I think you've done justice to the conversation. We appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you, Toys, and good evening to you all.
Yes. There was Florette Nakusera, who is the chairperson of the NUST Council, reflecting, of course, on issues that have emerged in the past couple of days regarding the appointment of the Vice-Chancellor at the university. Thank you for watching, and good night.